Tonight, Biden's big pick.
I believe in Joe.
What more we're learning about Kamala Harris, who becomes the first woman of color on a major presidential party ticket.
She was very disrespectful to Joe Biden.
And the president's take. Plus, striking a deal. The U.S. inks an agreement on an experimental vaccine. This amid global concern about Russian claims of a COVID-19 vaccine of their own.
I hope that the Russians have actually definitively proven that the vaccine is safe and effective. I seriously doubt that they've done that.
And how Christians and Yazidis are faring on the 6-year anniversary of the Syrian genocide. And on the road and in the air, a behind-the-scenes look at our recent trip with the Vice President. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. Joe Biden's historic pick, hard to nail down for the Trump campaign. Welcome to Faith Nation. I'm John Jessup. Well, the Democratic ticket is complete, and tonight, White House rival Joe Biden makes his first big public appearance with his new running mate, Kamala Harris. The junior senator from California is the first black woman on a major party ticket and a one-time presidential candidate herself. CBN's Heather Sells joins us now with more. Heather, a lot has happened in the last 24 hours.
That's right. And all eyes today are on the pair, Biden and Harris, as they make their first campaign appearance in Wilmington, Delaware. That is Biden's hometown. Yesterday, the campaign announced Harris, and they released a video chat of the big ask.
First of all, is the answer yes?
The answer is absolutely yes, Joe, and I am ready to work. I am ready to do this with you, for you. I'm just deeply honored.
Democrats are applauding the historic pick. Harris is the first woman of color on a major party ticket. Former President Obama said that Biden, quote, nailed this decision, but President Trump said he was surprised, given Harris went after Biden in a primary debate over his record on busing.
Do you agree today that you were wrong to oppose busing in America then?
No,
do you agree?
I did not oppose busing in America.
Policy-wise, Harris is known for supporting Medicare for all, the Green New Deal, and late-term abortion. As California's Attorney General, she fought to restrict religious freedom, filing a Supreme Court brief against Hobby Lobby for withholding contraception coverage based on religious grounds. But Dems today are lauding her as a person of faith, saying she regularly attends Third Baptist Church in San Francisco, and they're launching a faith outreach effort. The messaging on crime could also get tricky for both parties. The president has portrayed himself as a law and order champion in response to protests across the country, while Harris now takes heat for her past role as a tough-on-crime prosecutor.
And John, most are expecting a very personal, no-holds-barred campaign from both sides. Harris tweeted today, the character of this country is on the ballot this year, and multiple times we're in a battle for the soul of the nation. John.
The campaign heating up. CBN's Heather Sells, thank you so much. Well, here with us now, CBN Chief Political Analyst David Brody. David, handicap this election for us. What does Kamala Harris add to the ticket, and what's the potential political baggage she brings?
Yeah, look, John, there's a couple of different things going on here. First of all, what she adds, she's a skilled debater. She's very, very good. Remember, she's a prosecutor, so she knows how to kind of get after it, and we saw that in the Senate. She is likable. It kind of makes me think of when Barack Obama said to Hillary Clinton, "You're likable enough, Hillary." She's more than likable enough. So I think that will be good. Now, remember, this is a virtual campaign, so she's not going to have as much of the glad handing in terms of that. And look, I think she looks and sounds and has the resume to be presidential. So this is a pretty good pick by Joe Biden. Now, the downside here, we can get into this, John, but the downside here is that there is some progressiveness here that the Trump campaign is going to try to exploit. We'll have to see how they can kind of maneuver that, especially as it relates to suburban moderates.
David, we've been hearing over and over again that this is a historic vice presidential pick. How is this playing in Peoria, though?
Well, we're going to find out. Look, Kamala Harris had some problems during the campaign, the primary campaign, when she ran for president. She wasn't able to get traction. She was at about 2% or so. And I think the big knock on Kamala Harris, and what you're going to hear time and time again, is that she's malleable. In other words, she's influential. She kind of blows with the wind. And I think that's where the Trump campaign is going to make their hay, if you will, basically saying, look, she'll just quickly go with AOC on a few things, and then she'll be over here on the far left, and then she'll be here in the middle, and then she's everywhere. She's all over the place. And can you trust someone like that? That's why they're calling her phony Kamala, and I think that's going to be the mantra, at least from the Trump campaign.
David, speaking of the criticism, some calling for police reform criticized Senator Harris for being a tough prosecutor when she was Attorney General over California and San Francisco District Attorney. This also comes as President Trump paints himself as the law and order president opposed to defunding the police. How much of a conundrum does Harris present for the Trump campaign?
Well, John, I don't think it's for the Trump campaign. I think it's for the Democrats. I mean, they're going to have to figure this out. Remember, in 2009, Kamala Harris in her book talked about adding more police to the streets. Now, a couple months ago, after George Floyd, she wants less police in the streets, and she wants to reimagine policing in America. That's not going to go over well with the far left. So the tap dance by Kamala Harris and the far left to make sure they can get the energy and the base out on the left will be something to watch. That's what I'm watching.
David, finally, we're only 82 days away from the election. What do you see as Kamala Harris's main role for the Biden campaign between now and then?
Don't mess it up, pretty much. And that's really it. I mean, you know, look, she's going to kind of go steady as she goes. And I think she'll be able to probably do that. And that might be just about enough.
David Brody, thank you so much for your insights. We always appreciate you.
You bet.
Well, to the fight against COVID-19, new infections and deaths are down, but as states begin to trend in the right direction, the debate over reopening schools in some districts is turning sideways. CBN White House correspondent Ben Kennedy joins us now. Ben, what are we seeing when it comes to districts that move forward with in-person learning?
Well, John, turns out some kids went back to class with no problems, or others are facing a COVID-19 outbreak. One school in Georgia, for example, had 59 students and teachers test positive for the virus, and as a result, more than 1,000 people are now in quarantine.
So many of us were desperately wanting our kids to be face-to-face.
But that face-to-face has led to an increase in cases. The number of Americans infected with coronavirus topped 5 million this week, with more than 164,000 deaths. Florida reported its deadliest day on Tuesday, with 277 virus-related fatalities. This as President Trump announced the U.S. is buying 100 million doses of the Moderna vaccine in the event it's proven safe and effective. Russia claims it's the first country to approve a vaccine for COVID-19, but clinical trials were not completed. Scientific data for the vaccine has not been released.
If we wanted to take the chance of hurting a lot of people or giving them something that doesn't work, we could start doing this, next week if we wanted to. But that's not the way it works.
President Vladimir Putin said one of his daughters was given a dose, but Dr. Fauci said he seriously doubts the Russians have a safe and effective vaccine.
I hope that the Russians have actually definitively proven that the vaccine is safe and effective. I seriously doubt that they've done that.
Well, people are less likely to see a doctor during a pandemic. Turns out more people are taking their pets to get a checkup. Veterinarians are seeing an increase in business. Some are facing weeks ahead of time to get a booking, but it is a good sign the economy is beginning to bounce back. It shows that people have extra disposable income to spend on their animals. John?
All right, thanks, Ben Kennedy. Coming up, Christians in California defying COVID-19 restrictions over the right to worship. More on that when Faith Nation returns.
To have sex before you marry is a bad idea.
Don't tell me there's no such thing as gun violence.
That just depends on your definition of when life begins. Watch Dan and Dale tackle trending topics that test your faith on the next Faith Wire, Monday night at 9:30. The Global Lane takes you around the world, providing facts over fiction.
What might rising trade and geopolitical tensions mean for you on the home front?
With over 45 years of experience, award-winning journalist Gary Lane brings you the truth from a global angle.
What about the issue of immigration?
World news analysis you won't see anywhere else.
And it's all right here on the Global Lane.
Watch The Global Lane, Thursday night at 9:30.
Welcome back. Tonight, a California church is fighting back against a cease and desist order. Harvest Rock Church in Pasadena is requesting a preliminary injunction against California Governor Gavin Newsom over his COVID-19 orders, which church attorneys call unconstitutional. On Sunday, Harvest Rock Church joined other California houses of worship, violating Golden State restrictions on singing, chanting, and indoor attendance. Another church defying those state orders, Grace Community Church near Los Angeles. And joining us now, the Reverend John MacArthur, pastor of Grace Community Church in Sun Valley near LA. Pastor MacArthur, welcome to Faith Nation. Pastor, first off, you called the Sunday worship service a peaceful protest. Were you drawing a comparison to what appears to be a loophole, presumably since outdoor peaceful protests are allowed?
Yeah, that's the obvious reality here in California, as it is all the way across the country. Nobody wants to shut down a protest. May start out peaceful, could easily turn into a riot. In fact, last week here in LA, there were protests 5 days in a row. Nobody seemed to care whether anybody kept social distance or whether they wore masks. The rules don't apply to them, but they apply to a church. And so if we can call ourselves a protest, we should. We're the original protesters. We're Protestants. We've been doing this for 500 years. So that was a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek way of saying, if they can meet without any repercussions, why can't we?
And why do you think that distinction has been drawn?
Well, I think because the culture, the climate is to allow protest, even to foment protest. I think there are people in power in our country who are behind protests. I think they don't even mind, obviously, when those protests turn into riots, damage is done. You see across our country that there's an unwillingness to stop this in many of our cities. So there's an agenda going on to allow this kind of disruption, to tear down institutions that people hate and detest. And reality would tell us this, that the world is hostile against the Church of Jesus Christ, particularly those that are faithful in proclaiming his gospel. Jesus said, if they hated me, they'll hate you. That's just how it is. And obviously, we've had a couple hundred years of a good relationship with the government, but it's not surprising, given the climate today, that they're beginning to turn even on faithful churches.
Pastor, I want to ask you, most Christians would agree that churches are essential, but they've also been characterized as super spreader venues. Pastor, how much should churches and church leaders like yourself comply with the government to play a part in bringing California's recent surge to heel?
Well, I think the obvious way to answer that is to say that when the first initial model came out and we were told that millions were going to die, we did what any common sense people would do. We shut down the church, and I preached live stream to an empty auditorium. I did that for weeks, and eventually the people started coming back. We didn't invite them. We didn't tell them to do that. They began to realize that the predictions were way off. In fact, as of now, we've had about 10,000 deaths in California out of 40 million people. So you have a 99.98 chance that you're going to survive this just fine. The people get that. They understand that. They're moving around in our culture. The freeways are busy again. People are moving around and they're connecting with each other. They're just starting to come back to normal life. So far, we don't have anybody in our church, and we had 7,000 people here last Sunday that we know of who is sick. I haven't seen or heard of anybody in our church in the hospital. So they just don't believe the narrative. We are not going to do something that's dangerous to our people or any others. But at the same time, our folks and many, many other people whose churches are closed are deciding to come to Grace Church, and that's an adult decision that they make, weighing the realities that they know are true.
Pastor, we only have about a minute left. If you can, I understand the city issued a cease and desist order and threatened the church with a daily $1,000 fine and possible arrest. Can you explain why you believe it's important to take this stand? What's at stake here?
Well, what's at stake, first of all, is the reality that Christ is the head of the church. Is this anything new? Don't we as believers make heroes out of people who stood against tyrants throughout church history? This started in the book of Acts when they told the apostles not to preach. And the apostles said, you judge whether we obey God or man. That should be obvious to you. So this is nothing new for the church. It's new in our country. Faithful churches, faithful pastors have always realized Jesus Christ is Lord and head of his church. We follow him. Wonderfully, the Constitution allows us that privilege and demands that our leaders protect that privilege.
All right, Grace Community Church's John MacArthur. Pastor MacArthur, thank you so much for being with us today.
My pleasure.
Coming up, 6 years after a Christian and Yazidi genocide in Iraq, where things stand today.
On the home front.
Thanks for joining us for CBN's On the Home Front, where we highlight what the men and women of America's military do to defend our country. CBN honors the men and women in our military with an initiative called Helping the Home Front. It partners with churches across the country to meet the needs of their military families, from repairing homes to wiping out medical bills for wounded veterans.
On the Home Front, Tuesday morning at 10:30.
If you want to be an attorney with a passion for serving people and for excellence, Regent University needs to be high on your list.
Regent's award-winning law school doesn't just create lawyers. We create leaders, judges, prosecutors and defense lawyers, civil litigators, and leaders in government.
My focus has been trying to really make sure we have the future leaders we need for the bench and the bar and for society generally.
You'll learn from highly credentialed leaders who are current and former judges, distinguished scholars, and ACLJ counsel.
I'm so glad I chose Regent. The relationships here have been amazing. The faculty have been amazing. Not everybody's called to the same thing when they leave law school, but they're called by a God who has a purpose for their lives, and He is going to use that education to make a difference in the world.
Regent will prepare you to be a purpose-driven, practice-ready lawyer. To start your rewarding law career, complete the online application, submit your transcripts, and take the law school admissions test by July. Apply today.
Welcome back. 6 years ago this month, ISIS terrorists captured and brutally massacred Yazidis in the northern Iraqi city of Sinjar, forcing tens of thousands to flee their ancient home. Although it was eventually recaptured by Iraqi and U.S. forces, thousands of survivors are living with the trauma of ISIS's brutal reign. CBN's George Thomas discussed the plight of Yazidis and other religious minorities now 6 years later with the chairman of the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom.
Nadine Mienza, thank you so much for coming on the show. You know, it's been 6 years since ISIS took over large parts of northern Iraq back in 2014, killing and enslaving thousands of Yazidis, Christians, and other religious minorities. While the fighting is over, I can imagine the trauma remains for those who were held and those who were displaced. Would you describe what life is like today for Iraq's Yazidi community?
Yes, unfortunately, life is tough. Things have not gotten better in 6 years for the Yazidis. While ISIS is no longer has control of Sinjar, Iranian aligned militias have control of Sinjar. So the security situation is still problematic for the Yazidi community. So many of them, about 200,000, are still in IDP camps in northern Iraq, in the KRG region. And, you know, they haven't been able to return home because their homes haven't been rebuilt. The security situation is tough. And in addition, we also have a situation where the Yazidi community in Turkey in Syria is struggling because of the Turkish invasion. So in northeast Syria, Turkey is invaded, and really we've seen a lot of atrocities against the Yazidi community there as well.
Yeah, what is Iraq's government in Baghdad doing to help survivors, Yazidi survivors, rebuild their lives?
Well, we do know there is some work being done on accountability, and we appreciate that. There is some work being done with the UN and the Iraqi government to identify remains, and so that, you know, there can be some accountability. And so far, though, no one has been tried for specific crimes other than terrorism. So we haven't had the accountability that the women and men in the Yazidi community deserve. And we really need for, you know, the international community to pressure the Iraqi government to be able to let the Yazidi community have self-governance, for them to be able to have leadership from their own community, to have security from their own community in Sinjar, so they can rebuild the lives they had and be able to move forward. But at this point in time, you know, for them to drive between the camps in northern Iraq and Sinjar, I'm told it takes between 8 and 12 hours, even though it should just be a couple-hour drive because of over 20 different militia checkpoints they have to go through. And sometimes they're just turned away and they have to go back to the camps. So they don't have freedom of movement. They don't have houses they can move back into. They don't have security. So it's still a pretty tough situation, and the international community needs to stand up and demand more of the Iraqi government for the Yazidi community.
Iraq's Christian community is also struggling. In fact, a new report says Iraq's Christians could face extinction in parts of the country, especially in an area known as the Nineveh Plains. Tell us about what Iraq's Christian community is facing real quickly.
They're facing some similar problems with security. So again, so the way the Iranian militias work in Iraq is they're paid by the Iraqi government as security forces. So they get a paycheck from the Iraqi government, but they don't answer to the Iraqi government. Even if they ask them to come under their security forces, they continue to stay as independent militias, and most of them are aligned with Iran. So we have this situation where there is no good security. So the Christians are in a precarious situation in the Nineveh Plains as well. We really believe that in Iraq and Syria, there will not be religious minorities in these areas if we don't take action as the international community and the United States to be able to stand up for these minorities, to pressure the government of Iraq to allow them to provide their own security for their own self-governance, for them to be able to create communities where they feel safe. If not, they'll leave because they can't stay in a situation where they're being harassed. We have reports of kidnapping, killings, rapes, all sorts of atrocities against these communities. The U.S. government has, last year, they sanctioned 2 leaders of militias in the Nineveh Plains for those kind of atrocities against religious minorities, but it's too little, too late. So we need a stronger defense of these communities, and we need the U.S. government to really pressure the Iraqi government to do more.
Okay, terrific. We'll have to leave it there. Nadine, as always, thank you so much for your perspective and putting a spotlight on people of faith around the world. Appreciate it.
Having me.
Coming up, you saw a recent exclusive interview with Vice President Mike Pence. Now we pull back the curtains to give you a sneak peek behind the scenes.
If you want to be an attorney with a passion for serving people and for excellence, Regent University needs to be high on your list.
Regent's award-winning law school doesn't just create lawyers. We create leaders, judges, prosecutors and defense lawyers, civil litigators, and leaders in government. Ready to become a purpose-driven, practice-ready lawyer? To start your rewarding career, complete the online application, submit your transcripts, and take the law school admissions test by July.
Nutrition, exercise, essential oils, weight loss, and more. It's Healthy Living with Lori Johnson.
Talk about what's in this.
Join CBN health reporter Lori Johnson to get the latest information from today's top health experts.
This is fantastic.
Find out what you need to know to live a healthier life. Watch Healthy Living, Tuesday night at 9:30.
Woohoo! Hi, Superbook fans. Here's something else you'll love. It's the new Superbook Bible app. It's packed with games, activities, and Superbook episodes that you can watch for free. Oh, no! There's trivia, a fun daily devotional, and answers to your Bible questions. Plus, an easy-to-understand Bible the whole family will enjoy. You can even create your own Superbook character. Ta-da! Whoa!
Millsburg Falls man, come.
Sorry, pardon me. Sorry, excuse me. Ouch!
Are you getting this?
Earn super points to win daily prizes too, and so much more. Time to get back to my adventures. See you soon. It's the new Superbook Bible app. Free downloads on iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon.
Well, finally tonight, we here at Faith Nation aim to bring you news and information that matters to you and your world, with the ability to hear directly from our leaders on Capitol Hill to CBN exclusives with the president and his administration. Tonight, we pull back the curtain and leave you with a behind-the-scenes glimpse of what it was like for our CBN News crew to produce last week's interview with Vice President Pence aboard Air Force Two.
Pro-life law that only
And a special thanks to our CBN News crew, Mario Gonzalez and Reed Class, along with, of course, David Brody. And we look forward to covering Pence, Trump, Biden, and Harris on the campaign trail, whatever that might look like in the age of COVID-19 over the next 82 days. Well, thank you so much for watching Faith Nation. Hope you have a great night and hope to see you again tomorrow.